Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here, and welcome to episode 4 of Questions for Jeff. Today we're going to be talking about transcribing chords, expanding loops into full songs, my favorite time to practice, some underappreciated saxophonists of the day, and meditation. Stay tuned. So I'm going to be taking some questions from my Instagram feed first. If you're not following me on Instagram yet, a reminder, my Instagram username is @JeffSchneiderMusic, so hope to see you guys there. So the first question we're going to take is from John H. Marsden, and the question is, hey Jeff, most of my songs are based on loops. What techniques should I use in production/instrumentation to keep each section interesting and worth listening to? This is something that I'm coming up against a lot these days because I'm doing a lot of these loop of the days, as many of you know. And the thing about it is, if you're building a loop, then you can oftentimes expand that loop into something much more involved and a longer piece of music by staggering the different parts. So for instance, if you write a loop and you have 5 different things happening, you have the drums and the bass and maybe a few guitar parts and maybe a synth part here, different layers. You don't have to all have them come in at the same time. You can of course stagger them. So maybe you start off with just the bass and the keys, and then you bring in the drums for the next part of the loop or the next version of that loop. And then you continually add parts as you go along. That's a really nice way of expanding something you already have. Now, even then, you're still working with the same general, maybe it's a chord progression or it's a groove, and you might want to have something different to contrast what you have already with that loop. And that's where you want to get into thinking about, well, how do I create something that is still in line with what I've already written, but somewhat different? The motto I like to use is similar but different. So maybe that means you stay in the same key, but you go to a different chord. Let me use a specific example. If you look at a lot of music that's written already, that's a great way to come up with ideas, by the way, is to kind of take from songs that are already put together. And a great example that you see a lot, especially in the Great American Songbook, is you'll have A sections and then you'll have B sections that go to the 4 chord. It's a really excellent way of creating a new section that has a different feel to it, because when you go to the 4 chord, you're setting yourself up harmonically in a different place versus a progression that's more centered around the 1 chord. So if you take, for instance, take the A Train, that's a song a lot of people know, or Have You Met Miss Jones goes to the 4 chord. It does a lot of other harmonic things in the bridge as well. But thinking about, you have an A section and a B section, and the B section starts on a chord that is a little bit different from where the A section was, is a really excellent way of creating something that sounds a bit more varied and contrasts to what you already have. The other way to do it is rhythmically, of course. If you have a different groove, that could just mean instead of your drummer playing on the hi-hats, maybe you go to the ride cymbal. These simple variations do create a whole nother vibe for what other additional sections you want to include in your piece of music. It's almost like thinking about creating multiple loops and then putting them up against one another, but they just do have something in common. Maybe they're in the same key or they're in the same tempo. But don't be afraid to experiment and find something that contrasts to what you already have. That's the way to make something sound like it's more than just a loop, rather something that has more development. And that's what we're going for, similar but different. Keep that in mind and you'll be good to go. One more thing I'll add, I kind of alluded to this in the answer already, but listen to a lot of music and take note of what other people are doing to create B sections and bridges and developments of what they've already written. If you think about it in that sort of active way where you're really, you can even write it out, like what is happening here in the arrangement that makes it different from what happened before. Listen to just the drums, listen to the harmony. And if you're able to label it, then you'll have a much better chance at recreating those circumstances in your own music. Okay, the next question is from Sunji1231. The question is, how do you transcribe piano chords? How do you get each note in a chord? I want to transcribe some chords Robert Glasper plays, but it's too hard. Yeah, it's really tough to transcribe chords because it's not just a melody note or it's not just a bass note. The outer voices those are the easiest notes to transcribe because they're the most easy to pick out. It's those inner voices that are the most elusive. So it's a lot of experience, a lot of practice, and a lot of really listening hard. You have to grab any notes you can An interesting exercise is to go to a piano or a guitar, any note that is or any instrument that's polyphonic. Play a lot of notes at the same time. It doesn't have to be like a specific chord or any like real chord at all. It can be random notes. And see if you can cycle through from low to high with your ear, almost like a roller coaster, going up from the lowest note I'm just talking about your attention here, where you're hearing, where you're focusing your ear. You play a bunch of notes and you listen to the bottom note and you kind of go up from there, and then eventually you get to the top note and then you can come back down, just like a roller coaster. It's a little bit of an abstract exercise, but it's really effective for getting you to hear those inner voices. And the other thing, as I said before, just listening really closely and listening to the same thing over and over and over again. You can put it on a loop and just have it go over and over and over again. Try to pick out any note you can. And once you get one note, then you can write it down, go for another note, write it down. It's a slow process. There's no doubt about it. But the more you do it, the better you get, the faster you get at it. And there's nothing like improving your ears like listening in for inner voices. It's an amazing way to really hone in on getting your ears super tuned up and accurate and strong. By the way, if you guys don't know who Robert Glasper is, he's a really, really cool pianist and keyboardist. So be sure to check out his stuff. Robert Glasper Experiment, I think, is the name of his group right now. There's a lot of cool sort of jazz-infused hip-hop music. So definitely worth a listen if you haven't already. So this next question from Dr. Inferno 673, somewhat similar to what we were just talking about. The question here is about transcribing chord changes. And this might not be working on getting the specific voicings, but just transcribing what the chords are. And the way to start here, I think, is to just listen to the bass first. Really try to hone in on that bass note, get the roots, and then it can be a lot easier to figure out what the rest of the chord is. For the most part, most chords are either going to be major or minor. And if you're working with 7 chords, you've got your major 7, your dominant 7, and your minor 7. And then of course, there are more chords besides those 3, but those are the 3 main ones. So, if you can limit your options and use a little bit of process of elimination, that can be a really helpful way to figure out what the chords are actually, what they actually are in that particular song you're trying to transcribe. Okay, got a question here from Meganomics 101. When is your favorite time to practice? These days with the baby and everything, it's like any time I can get is awesome. Once things settle down and when things were a little bit more settled before, I always like to try to practice first thing in the morning. So wake up as early as I can and get as much time in as I can. If I can do a couple hours in the morning, that's great. That's enough for me to do like maintenance and things like that. And, maybe have a little bit of fun at the end there. And then I can, if I have extra time throughout the day, I consider that bonus time. When I was practicing in school and stuff, doing more like 4 to 8 hour days or more, I would still wake up really early. So that way you kind of ensure that you're at least getting 2 to 4 hours first thing in the morning, and then you're kind of good to go. So if you don't happen to be able to practice later in the day, you at least have done that much. That's why I always like to do it first thing. So that's my favorite time to practice is like, 6 in the morning if I can. Okay, the next question is from Pamuel Sowell, who I think is Samuel Powell. Question is, how long did it take you to find your setup? Mouthpiece, reeds, ligature, sax. Took me quite a while, and I don't think it was because I wasn't able to find the right gear. It was probably because I was just always blaming my gear for not getting the sound that I wanted to. And then at a certain point, I found something that was good enough, and I worked with it. And I worked really hard at all the different sound exercises and everything. And then I was able to get the sound that I want, and it didn't really matter what the setup is. So, these days I can put on a different mouthpiece or a different reed. Maybe it's not the most comfortable thing in the world or what I'm used to, but in terms of achieving the sound that I want, I'm able to do it. And it's not really the gear that gets the sound. It's the person playing with that gear. So to give you a specific answer to the question, I think let's see. I bought my current mouthpiece 2009, around 2009. So I guess I would say it took me, and when did I start? Maybe the year 1997, 98. So maybe it took about 10 years to find something that I actually stuck with. And I've stuck with the same setup for, since about 2009. So it took a long time. But again, it's a mental thing. It's like, okay, this is good enough. I'm going to make this work. And as long as you're not getting exhausted from playing a mouthpiece that's too big and you're using all your air and not getting any sound, that's not a good situation. And you also don't want to have something that's so easy to play that you're not able to lay into it and really blow. You want to find that right amount of resistance. Once you have something that feels good, you can get the sound wherever you want it to once you do all the exercises and work on what you hear in your head and getting it to come out on your horn. So I try not to worry about gear too much these days because I don't want to open Pandora's box up again and spend another 9 years trying to find that perfect setup. Okay, question here from Matthew Roberts 8. How do you find gigs after college as a horn player compared to rhythm section players that have more opportunities? Yeah, it's a solid question. Rhythm section players, I guess, tend to have more opportunities because everybody needs a bassist. Not everybody needs a saxophonist necessarily. But at the same time, as the saxophonist, you're the lead instrument. So you have, I think, a better shot at getting sort of that notoriety and that it factor, which can help you get gigs, because if you are able to build up a bit more of that allure because you're the front guy or the front woman, then you're able to, pull in that audience, and then club owners are going to want to hire you. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not trying to say that rhythm section players can't be leaders of the band. I just think that horn players are really good at leading bands because their instrument kind of fits that role where they're out in front, they're playing the melody line. It goes hand in hand. So yeah, I think the fact that because the horn player or the singer or whatever has the ability to be the front person, then they can then help build the audience. And that's what the club owners want. That's what people who hire groups want. They want to bring in an audience. So if you're able to get yourself some sort of a following, that's really all that club owners care about. I mean, they want you to bring in people to spend money at their bar. Let's face it. One other thing I'll say is that you don't want to rely on the establishment, the venue, to be doing the promotion for your gig. You want to have the audience to bring to the establishment, to the venue. That's why people are going to hire you to play, especially a club owner. It's one thing if you're trying to get a pianist to hire you, to be in their band. That's a matter of being really good at your instrument, being able to learn tunes and be, just fit in with a group well. That's a music thing. That's separate. But when it comes to getting the gigs from the club owners, again, they care about filling the seats. So, maybe they'll do some promotion on their social channels and on their marquee. But at the end of the day, you need to be bringing in that audience. So that is one of the advantages of being a horn player, because like I said before, there is a certain allure that goes along with being the band leader and being the front runner. So you can build an audience that way. It's not an easy thing to do, but once you're able to do it, the gigs will come because you can guarantee people are going to come see you at the show. I could definitely talk more about this, in a future video where we talk about how to build that following. But it's certainly important to get those gigs because you got to fill the seats. I got a question here from Brandon Eric on my Facebook page asking, do you have any favorite underappreciated saxophonists that you listen to regularly, either from back in the day or present day? I know I've talked about this guy before on my channel. It's Will Vinson. I don't know. Maybe he's not underappreciated at this point. I mean, I started listening to Will when he was in his 20s, so he wasn't as well-known as he is now. But, still, if you haven't checked out Will Vinson, you got to go listen to him. He's the man. Amazing player, a fantastic teacher. So I'm happy to promote him because he's one of my favorite players to this day. And I started listening to him as his student back when I was 16 or something like that. So it's been a long time, but I don't even know if I'd call him underappreciated because he's pretty well known at this point. But if you haven't heard of him, check out Will. Okay, I've got a question here from Leonardo de Lima asking if I can listen to a performance of this video that he posted. So and make some comments and tell him what I think. I'm going to do that. I might do that actually for several different people. So if you guys want a critique or something like that, a little bit of feedback, I think I might make a video that is focused just on that. So Leonardo, I will take a listen. I will do a little commentary on your music. So stay tuned for that in a future video. Okay, last question for today is from Kevin the Davis asking, are you into meditation? Do you think it would channel your creativity? And yes, I'm definitely into meditation. I haven't done it too much in recent months, but I used to do it a lot, especially when I was in college. I would meditate an hour in the morning, which is an amazing way to start the day, especially if you go right into practicing. I'm not certain that it would channel creativity necessarily, but I can definitely say that it helps with practicing, because the biggest part about practicing is staying focused. And if you don't realize that you're not focused, like if you don't realize that your mind has wandered, then you're wasting some of that precious practice time. And meditation is a great way of becoming more aware of when your mind wanders. That's basically what meditation is. So when it comes to practicing, I think it's really, really helpful. In a way, practicing is like meditating, because it's a super focused activity. And if you're able to realize that moment when you start thinking about something other than what you're working on, and you're able to bring your attention back to what it is you're actually working on, that's essentially what meditation is. It's becoming aware of that mind wandering and bringing it back to the task at hand. Of course, when you're meditating, you're not doing something as interesting as practicing. You're just kind of breathing, so it's even more challenging to stay focused. But that's the idea there. It's focusing just on your breath, so that it's a very elusive thing, and then your mind wanders, and then you realize that it's wandered, you bring it back to your breath, and you keep doing that over and over again. So when it does come time to practice, you can really easily realize when your mind wanders, and then of course bring it back to practicing. So super effective for making your practice time effective and efficient. And in terms of creativity, yeah, I mean, I think if you are practicing more effectively, then you're going to be playing more effectively, and you'll be able to be more creative, because the practice time has been more efficient than it would if you hadn't had that same level of focus. But that's a great question. Thank you, Kevin the Davis. Thank you for all the questions, you guys. I know I wasn't able to get to all of them, but try not to make these episodes 30 minutes long, because that's just crazy. But keep leaving the questions. I'm going to be posting and asking for questions every Friday on Instagram and Facebook. So if you're not following me there, definitely check out those pages. And that'll do it for episode 4 of Questions for Jeff. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.